It is great to be with you again this evening. You know, I'm sure that most people would agree that the ultimate goal of us is to be happy in life. I think both the sane and the insane desire to experience as much pleasure, contentment, fulfillment, and joy as possible. But it is an ironic and unfortunate fact that the majority of the people of this world are looking for happiness in the wrong places, and they're going to the wrong sources. It is to our eternal benefit that God has reserved for us the experiences of Solomon, king of Israel, to help us in our search for the true meaning to life. Now, when we consider the life of Solomon, you have to understand, I don't think there was ever a man ever born on this earth who is more qualified to write on the subject of happiness and where not to find it. Solomon possessed some pretty unique qualities as he searched for these potential sources for happiness. And we're going to begin here in the book of Ecclesiastes, if you're open there. We're going to look at Ecclesiastes chapter 2 and look at verses 7 through 9. Now Solomon said, I got me servants and maidens, and had servants born in my house. Also I had great possessions of great and small cattle above all that were in Jerusalem before me. I gathered me also silver and gold, and the peculiar treasure of kings and of the provinces. I gat me men singers and women singers, and the delights of the sons of men as musical instruments, and that of all sorts. So I was great, and increased more than all that were before me in Jerusalem. There's no doubt when you read about Solomon, he was a man of great material wealth. And if anybody could find happiness through money, it would have been Solomon. Now, let's go ahead and go. We're going to spend a little time in the book of 1 Kings. Let's go to 1 Kings chapter 4. We're going to look at some other ways in which Solomon was looking for happiness, for contentment, for true meaning to life. And we're going to begin in 1 Kings chapter 4. And let's look at verses 29 through 32. 1 Kings 4, beginning in verse 29. It says, And God gave Solomon wisdom and understanding exceeding much, and largeness of heart, even as the sand that is on the seashore. And Solomon's wisdom excelled the wisdom of all the children of the east country, and all the wisdom of Egypt. For he was wiser than all men, than Ethan the Ezrahite, and Heman, and Chalcol, and Darda, and the sons of Mahal. And his fame was in all nations round about. And he spake 3,000 proverbs, and his songs were 1,005. There's no doubt Solomon excelled in wisdom and in knowledge. Just read through the book of Proverbs, and you'll see his wisdom. Now, let's go ahead and move forward a little bit to 1 Kings chapter 10. 1 Kings chapter 10. And we're going to begin in verse 18. And notice here the unlimited power that Solomon had. Now, he searched for happiness in material things. He searched for happiness in wisdom and knowledge. But now look at his power that he had. In 1 Kings chapter 10, beginning in verse 18, it says, The king made a great throne of ivory and overlaid it with the best gold. Remember, he's king. And this is one magnificent throne, showing the power that he had. Now let's drop down to verse 22. The king had at sea a navy of Tarshish with a navy of Hiram. Look at verse 26. Solomon gathered together chariots and horsemen, and he had 1,400 chariots and 12,000 horsemen. Look at verse 28. Solomon had horses brought out of Egypt, the best of the horses. Now, he was not just head over Israel, but he had great military power, not just on the land, but also on the sea. He had a huge navy. Now, let's move on to chapter 11, verses 1 through 3, and notice the unlimited opportunities that he had for fleshly indulgence. In verse 1 it says, Solomon loved many strange women, together with the daughter of Pharaoh, women of the Moabites, Ammonites, Edomites, Zidonians, and Hittites. Of the nations concerning which the Lord said unto the children of Israel, You shall not go into them, neither shall they come in unto you. For surely they will turn away your heart after their gods. Solomon clave unto these in love, and he had 700 wives, princesses, and 300 concubines. So Solomon's really diligently searching for pleasure, and he was looking for it in sexual indulgences. So notice that Solomon had just about everything at his fingertips, and surely if anybody could, he could find the true meaning to life. Now let's go back to the book of Ecclesiastes. We're going to begin in chapter 1. In fact, the rest of our lesson is going to be taken from chapter 1, so we're going to stay in the book of Ecclesiastes. Now, the theme of Ecclesiastes is found in the first chapter, second verse. Vanity of vanities, saith the preacher. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity. The word vanity is found some 37 times in this short book of Ecclesiastes in only 13 chapters. The word vanity is from the Hebrew word hebel and literally means breath. And it's used metaphorically of anything that is frail, fleeting, or unsatisfying. Now Solomon, if you'll notice, he uses the phrase vanity of vanities. And that actually means vanity to the highest degree. Now in verse 3, Solomon raises a question. What profit hath a man of all his labor which he taketh under the sun? Now, you look at this phrase, under the sun. It has to strictly do with earthly things that are void of spiritual influence and things that are apart from God. He's talking about the physical things. In other words, what he's really asking here, what is the real and lasting benefit of one's labor here on this earth for the material things? At this point, you might want to consider some questions that Jesus himself asked in Matthew 16, verse 26. For what is a man profited if he shall gain the whole world and lose his own soul? Or what shall a man give in exchange for his soul? Solomon's pretty much asking the question, wanting to know. He doesn't really know. Jesus' question is a rhetorical question. We know the answer to that. There is no profit to these sayings on this earth because one day we're going to die and we're going to have to give them all up. We came into this world with nothing but our soul. When we leave, we're going to leave with nothing but our soul. And what's going to really matter is what is going to be the condition of that soul when we leave. Is it going to be right with God or not? That's the serious thing. That's the main thing. Now, in the first chapter of the book of Ecclesiastes, Solomon gives insight to what the true meaning to life is, and he draws his conclusions from two main areas. The first is his observations regarding the meaningless cycles of life. And second is his own experiences as he sought to find out this meaning through various avenues of the flesh. And really in chapter 1 here, he's going to be focusing upon his knowledge and his wisdom. Now, the first thing that Solomon found was that there is a weariness from one generation to the next. Look at verse 4. He said, one generation passeth away, and another generation cometh, but the earth abideth forever. You know, man is only here on this earth for a short time. James brings this out in James chapter 4. Describes our life as a vapor that appears for a little time and then just vanishes away. And the older we get, the more we learn that this life is very short. But he says, man is here on this earth for a short time, but the thing is, when he dies, another man just takes his place. From this under the sun view is that while the constant succession of generations of men go on, the earth is seemingly unchanged. It's just like nothing ever really happened. So the point is, if man was as permanent as the earth seems to be, then there might be a profit to man's labor. But we know it's a lot shorter than the age of the earth. Solomon's conclusion, therefore, is that earthly labors are vanity because man just simply comes and goes. The second thing that Solomon found was that there's a weariness of repetition in this world. Look at verses 5 through 7. He said, the sun also ariseth, and the sun goeth down, and hasteth to his place where he arose. The wind goeth toward the south, and turneth about into the north. It whirleth about continually. Reminds me of my time up in North Texas. I guess Solomon must have been from Texoma or something. And it says, and the wind returneth again according to his circuits. All the rivers run into the sea, and yet the sea is not full. Unto the place from whence the rivers come, thither they return again. The sun is an instance of the ever-recurring change in the face of an enduring sameness. You know, the sun rises, it sets, every day, no matter what, never resting. And it seems that it doesn't really make any progress, at least according to what Solomon is saying. And all of its work merely brings it back right to the beginning, and it starts all over again. He sees this as a meaningless cycle. Now, the wind is another example of motion continually repeated with apparently no progress. The wind seemingly is the freest of all of God's creation, but it's still bound by the weariness of repetition. It blows from the north, then it goes from the south. North again, south again, year after year after year. Then he talks about the rivers. They're bound to an unbearing operation that he says produces no tangible result that he can even see. The rivers flow into the sea, the sun evaporates it, it forms in the clouds move over the land, it forms rain, falls on the ground, runs into the river, right back to the sea again. I don't know if Solomon ever really understood this type of cycle of this evaporation, condensation, and precipitation. But this is something that is one of the gems of the Bible. It is a scientific fact. Whether he understood it or not, he spoke of it. And this is something that man probably didn't really understand until years later. But it's a gem of the Bible showing that this is not a book of man. Viewing things from under the sun, Solomon says, nature is nothing but a vicious cycle. It is nothing but a weariness of repetition. Then Solomon found the weariness of never being satisfied. Look at verse 8. He said, all things are full of labor, man cannot utter it. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor the ear filled with hearing. Man, just like nature, is confined to a circle from which he doesn't seem that he can free himself. Despite all of our labors, man is never satisfied, is he? And when one thinks that he has obtained satisfaction, it's only temporary and it's fleeting. Given time, you soon desire something else, something newer, something bigger, something better, something faster. Man doesn't ever seem to be satisfied with what he has. He wants more. In fact, Solomon even said in Proverbs 27, verse 20, hell and destruction are never full, so the eyes of man are never satisfied. Next, in verses 9 through 11, Solomon found the weariness of there being nothing new under the sun. He said, the thing that hath been, it is that which shall be. And that which is done is that which shall be done. And there is no new thing under the sun. Is there anything whereof it may be said, see, this is new? It hath been already of old time which was before us. There is no remembrance of former things, neither shall there be any remembrance of things that are to come with those that shall come after. Everything that has happened in the world is going to happen again. You've probably heard the saying, history always repeats itself, and it pretty much does. If something is thought to be new, well, it's only because we've probably forgotten that it's already occurred, and it just seems new to us. But you might ask, well, what about all these modern technological advances? You know, you go back in history and you see magnificent things that man has done. Built the pyramids, invented mummification. Today's day, we see these huge computers that can do just about anything and everything. They can walk, they can talk. The only thing they can't do is they can't reason. But really, if you look at all these things, they're just basic things that are found in nature and God's wisdom, and they're rearranged just to simply make something that's different. But the basics are never new. But no matter how great the creations of man may be, they can't even compare to the creation of God. So given enough time, future generations will forget what we are doing today and only rediscover what has been learned before. So faced with what appears to be such meaningless cycles of life, Solomon now searches for the true meaning of life in another area. And now he's going to look for earthly wisdom and knowledge. Now, Solomon is going to preface his search of this in verses 12 through 15. Notice what he said. I, the preacher, was king over Israel in Jerusalem, and I gave my heart to seek and to search out by wisdom concerning all things that are done under heaven. This sore travail hath God given to the sons of man to be exercised therewith. I have seen all the works that are done under the sun, and behold, all is vanity and vexation of spirit. That which is crooked cannot be made straight, and that which is wanting cannot be numbered. Now this is Solomon, who is king of Israel. We know exactly which Solomon we're talking about here. But Solomon gave special attention and effort to gain as much knowledge as possible that he could. And this was a task that he was actually especially equipped for because God gave him great wisdom. So here's a man probably with the greatest ability known to mortal man, and he searches for the true meaning of life in knowledge under the sun. His conclusion is, all is vanity and vexation of spirit. Then he applies his wisdom. Look at verses 16 and 17. He said, I communed with mine own heart, saying, Lo, I am come to great estate, and have gotten more wisdom than all they that have been before me in Jerusalem. Yea, my heart had great experience of wisdom and knowledge. I gave my heart to know wisdom and to know madness and folly. Solomon here realizes the great wisdom and knowledge that he has attained. I find it funny that he doesn't seem to give God the credit for the wisdom who gave him that. But he applied this wisdom and this knowledge to these things that were under the sun. He came to knowledge through observation, through madness and folly. He gave himself to philosophy, all in search for the true meaning of life and to find happiness. So he comes to a conclusion concerning human wisdom in verses 17 and 18. He said, I perceive that this also is a vexation of spirit, for in much wisdom is much grief, and he that increaseth knowledge increaseth sorrow. So Solomon concluded that attaining human wisdom, and I do want to emphasize human wisdom here, was like grasping the wind and never really gave him an answer to his problem. So he also realizes that wisdom also brings about grief and sorrow. The more wisdom and understanding that men have, that we acquire, the more we see the unsatisfactory nature of that wisdom. One becomes burdened as they learn the things of life, the things that we really have no control over, and the things that we probably worry the most about. You know, I've always said, you shouldn't worry about things that you have no control of, but we still do it anyway. So in Solomon's search for the true meaning of life, he begins with wisdom. He set his heart to know wisdom, and he found such wisdom to be vexation of spirit. Now, the American Standard Version says it is a striving after the wind. It's like trying to grasp the wind, but you cannot grab hold of it. The true meaning to life, of course, is not found in human wisdom, and it's not going to be found in the philosophical attempts in life. Life, from a worldly standpoint, from under the sun, is nothing but vanity. It is useless. So Solomon finally comes to the true meaning to life at the end of the book of Ecclesiastes. He finally comes to a correct conclusion in Ecclesiastes chapter 12, verse 13. He says, let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter of trying to find true meaning to life and happiness. And he said, it is to fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole of man. Nothing else really matters. We need to learn from what Solomon did. He spent his whole life looking for the true meaning to life and happiness in various places, and really he had the ability to do so as king of Israel. And he could not find happiness in any of these things. They were nothing but vanity and vexation of spirit. And he finally comes to the conclusion, our happiness is in God. To fear him and to keep his commandments. It's the only way we can find true happiness and true meaning to life. It is through him, not through the things of this world. These things of this world are fleeting. They're here one day, they can be gone the next. They're not a guarantee. But God is here forever. He is eternal. And so we need to put our trust in God to find the true happiness and meaning to life. And if you have not given yourself to God, then you're not going to find happiness here. Nothing but vanity and vexation of spirit. And if you want true happiness, give your life to God. Turn everything over to him. Fear him. Keep his commandments. Obey the gospel of Jesus Christ so that you can have the hope of eternal life one day. This life here is nothing but a trial period to see whether we are worthy of heaven or not. We're not here to find happiness for ourselves in the things of this world. We're being tried, put to the test, see whether we are really worthy of heaven or not. That's where true happiness is. And if you haven't found that, if you have not been striving that direction, let us help you find the true meaning. If there's anything that we can help you with this evening, whether you need to obey the gospel, be baptized into Christ, or maybe you need to rededicate your life to God, whatever it may be. Maybe you've put too much emphasis upon the world. If there's anything that we can help you with, please, won't you respond while together we stand and sing.